Every year, an amazing thing happens on this podcast, which is we have Mr. Jon Clemence as a guest. Jon, welcome again.
Thank you, David.
I'm really glad to have you on today, and I'm happy because we are going to be discussing not just writing, but a very particular use of writing, which is convincing and persuading people to do things. Yes. For example, emails, not only emails, but also ads, copy for ads, for social media, for landing pages in general. The intention today is not to cover everything in depth, but to give you a general idea of how to write in a convincing way. So let's begin with this question, Jon. What do you think are principles of persuasive writing that particularly non-native speakers can capitalize on?
Yeah, so I thought of a couple. We could talk about principles of creative writing all day. So I narrowed it down to just a couple for us. The first one, I want to encourage your audience that you don't have to use big words and you don't have to use complicated sentences. In fact, if you want to be persuasive, the opposite is true. Usually the simpler and the clearer you make it, the better it is. And so I'm an American, and I did some research, and I learned that 54% of adults in the US, in my country, they basically can't read at a 6th grade level, which would be like a intermediate level in our country. And that's not a great stat for me to say because I don't feel very proud saying it. But the upshot for you is you don't have to be overcomplicated when you write. In fact, if you do, you're going to lose a lot of even native speakers because they just can't read that well. Again, that's a big problem here, and I don't like broadcasting it, but it does help, right? So don't think you have to use big words. Don't think you have to be complicated. You don't. And then the second tip that I would suggest is to focus on authenticity. I'm sure we'll talk about AI and how we can use it in a little bit. And I'm not going to judge anyone for using AI. Don't worry about that. But if you do use it, make sure you personalize whatever it is that it gives you before you publish it. The one thing that does cross cultures and cross languages is stories, right? You have stories, you have experiences. That's how we connect as a people, regardless of where you're from or what language you speak or where you live. So I would say, even if like those would be two great starting points, is just keep it simple. Don't worry about using big words and focus on authenticity and bringing your true self to the conversation. And I think that you'd be on a pretty good foundation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I had never considered that. The fact that you mentioned keep it simple when you write, because people don't have that much reading comprehension nowadays. So it is a sad point, but still an important point. You mentioned authenticity, you mentioned personality, you mentioned simplicity of words. I think that maybe the aspect of simplicity of words can be easily done by a non-native speaker. But what do you think can be aspects of this type of writing that can represent a challenge if I am not a native speaker and I need to write copy for an ad, for example?
Yeah. And again, we could literally be here all day talking about this question. So I'm trying to narrow it down to something manageable that we can have a takeaway. And I thought of two that kind of like really just hit me right away. Number one is slang. So slang is so hard. Even for me, I'm a professional writer and I still don't understand all of the slang words. So I have teenagers and they come home from school and they start talking and I have to stop them and say, I'm sorry, what does that mean? Because there's just too much to keep up with. And then also, like when I'm speaking with say a person from England as opposed to the United States, there's that barrier too. So slang is tough. Slang is really tough. So I probably would shy away from using it in my copy as much as possible, unless there's something in your company where that's like an aspect of the brand voice, in which case I hope there's some kind of brand guide to give you some guidance. But generally speaking, I would stay away from slang in my professional copy. That's one. And then the second one, which is probably equally hard right now, is the politics. So in the U.S. especially, the political division in our country is insane. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And so you don't want to say something and unintentionally offend, 30% of the population. And I have a great example for this, by the way. So my friend Larry Roberts, he is a podcast host and does some other things. He owns a company called Red Hat Media. And every
Mm-hmm.
time you see him, whether it's on LinkedIn or at a conference or at a podcast, he's wearing a red hat because that's his logo. That's his, sign that this is Larry Roberts. I wear a red hat. Well, he posted on LinkedIn the other day that someone got very offended with him for wearing a red hat because he thought that meant that Larry supported Donald Trump. That's not what it means. And he actually ended up losing the contract because of it, because this guy just couldn't get it through his head that not everyone who wears a red hat supports Donald Trump. That's just, but it's unfortunately, it's an association that's been made. And so I know that's not writing per se, but that's a great example of just being careful about, the words you use and trying your best to not inadvertently say something that's politically charged and you didn't know it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here I would like to point out two things. First is that maybe the challenges a non-native can face are the same a native speaker can face, actually,
Yes.
because
Yes.
like in this case, we're speaking about like people in the US who have encountered these situations. And on the other end, I will say, John, for a non-native speaker, cultural awareness is very important. Cultural awareness, even though you are creating copy for an American audience, but you don't know, maybe is also going to reach a Canadian audience or an English audience or an Australian audience. So these things might impact how other people perceive the information you're expressing in your copy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to that point, if you're not aware of American politics, and if you aren't, then I commend you because it's, again, depressing right now. But to your point, like Canada doesn't like us, Australia doesn't like us, England. I mean, so there's a lot of infighting right now, and it's very frustrating. But yeah, just because we all speak English doesn't mean we all agree.
Yeah. I have a lot of ideas in my mind. I'm not gonna say them out loud because then we will go down the rabbit hole of speaking politics, and that is not what this episode is about. All right, so let's go back on track onto writing. All right, John. So you mentioned not using big words is very important, which I think might be a common mistake in non-native speakers because as a non-native speaker, sometimes I think, oh, I want to sound more elegant or I want to sound more native, quote unquote. So I'm going to use these weird words. Yes, I'm going to use more complicated vocabulary and verb tenses and expressions. So people think I have a lot of skill in my language. So I do think I agree this is a mistake. And what do you think are other mistakes and non-native speakers could be making in writing copy in English?
Well, I have a couple of ideas that I think can help someone maybe avoid some common mistakes that they might otherwise have made. And again, I think it's interesting. You said the same thing a moment ago that I was thinking about as I was preparing for our conversation, is that so many of these answers and so many of these questions apply to you, whether you speak English natively or as a second language. It's really more about the higher level of communication than anything else. But anyway, to answer your question, the best thing you can do, if you have the budget, hire a copywriter. I hire a CPA. I hire an accountant to do my taxes because I'm not an expert at taxes. You can do the same thing for your writing. You can hire someone like me to come in and help you and write your content for you. You can obviously will give direction and have the final say, of course, but you can actually offload that burden onto them. No matter what language you speak, right? So if you want the best possible result, hire a professional. Now, I understand not everyone has the budget to do that, and that's okay. So what else can you do? Well, if you have an American or a British or an Australian or Canadian coworker or friend that you trust and that you think could help you out, you can bring them into your creative process. I mean, send what you're going to post to them and ask them, hey, does this sound good? Does this sound like something a native person would write? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Right. So use them as a resource if they're, willing to do that and you trust them. If you can't, afford to hire a professional. And then the third thing I would say is honestly, read as much as you can in English. If you want to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader. And so think about it as whether it's LinkedIn posts or novels or whatever it is that you like to read. Read as much as you can in English. And then for the writers that really resonate with you, study that. Figure it out. What did they do well that you could incorporate into your writing? I think of, this is a common example in the United States, but the Secret Service, I believe is the Secret Service, they're in charge of many things. One of the things they're in charge of is spotting and kind of finding counterfeit currency in our system. And the way they're trained to spot counterfeit currency is they actually sit down with real US currency and learn all the features of that. Once you know the real thing, it's extremely easy to spot the fake thing. And I think the same principle applies with writing. Once you really dig into and start reading and studying these English writers who resonate with you, you're going to start to understand, oh, that's how it works, or I can use this, or I can do that. And then I think that's, going to lead to a lot of good things for you.
Great. Okay. Now let's go, let's be a little bit more, or let's get a little bit more into strategy. Yeah. If I am a copywriter, or if I'm learning copywriting as a non-native speaker, what could be a simple structure I could apply on my posts or my landing pages? Yes, something that maybe that is vertical to all these formats that can make my writing more engaging and more persuading.
Yeah. So I have a framework that I use, and it's one that a lot of people use because it works, because it really does help to make your content connect with more people. And it's basically 3 ideas. They're very simple to understand and to start implementing. You can start doing it today, which is great. I love this. So the first thing you want to do with any kind of post or LinkedIn, whether it's a LinkedIn post or a blog post or an email or whatever, and this includes ads, is you always want to start with a hook. So you need to grab people's attention from the first word, whether that's a startling statistic or a story of something that happened to you, or a statement that sounds like it's false but is actually really true if you stop and think about it, right? Something to get past all of the noise in our lives today and put that hook in there to the reader to make them want to continue reading. So always start with a hook. The second thing, and this is a big thing that I see even really even people who should know better still do this, is keep your sentences and your paragraphs short. This kind of goes back to the reading comprehension thing, but it also ties into the fact that we're all reading on screens now. And if you try to read a large block of text on your phone screen, it's very difficult. So don't put that barrier in for your audience. So keep your sentences short, keep your paragraphs to 2 or 3 sentences max. Use lots of bullet lists and other call outs to just make it easy, physically easy to read. And then finally, the third thing that I always do is end with a call to action. So give your reader the next step. If it's an ad, it's pretty simple. It's, hey, go to this website and use this coupon code to get 25% off, right? There's your call to action. If it's a social media post, it might be asking them a question. Hey, what do you think? Here's my story. What's your story? If it's a newsletter, it might be click here to subscribe or click here to read more. Give the reader something to do after they've finished. So start with a hook to engage them right away. Keep sentences, keep paragraphs short, make it easy to read on a screen, and then end with a clear call to action. So if you can take that framework, you're going to start applying it immediately. And from experience, I can tell you, you will notice that you'll see more engagement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. That's a great framework. So hook, short sentences, and a call to action. Just a side question, because I see clients sometimes like they want you to have 3, 5, 7 calls to action. What is the right number? I think maybe one call to action is everything you should have on these type of texts. What is the right number of call to action that you should include?
I focus on having one call to action. If you have 7 calls to action on your sales page, how on earth are people going to know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about it from the user's or the reader's perspective, right? And they don't have all day to sit there and figure out what you want them to do. So rather than using 7 different calls to action, use one call to action and put it 7 places. That's a better idea than 7 different calls to action.
Yeah.
But I would say focus on, before you ever sit down to write a word, focus on what do you want that person who reads it to do next, and then write everything around that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask that question, because even if as people who work in media production are aware of this, sometimes clients want you to add the link to their ebook and the link to their event and the link to their email thing and the link to the blah, blah, blah. So you end up like having 7, 8 calls to action. Like you have a lot of long URLs there. And then like attention gets dispersed and people don't actually click the link that you want them to click.
Yeah.
Good. So this is like the more micro thing, the framework we just mentioned, and I would like also to refer to the more macro thing, which refers to resonating with different audiences in different regions, even internationally. For example, if I'm writing for the US, like I'm aware the US is huge. Like, not because it's a single country means everybody perceives things and it communicates the same way. So across states, there's going to be a lot of difference in communication. And then across countries, there's going to be a difference in communication. And also because English reaches countries where English is not a native language, but people still speak it. It can be a second language or a foreign language. So like your message can reach a lot of people. Are there strategies to help writers resonate with wide audiences or even international audiences?
Yeah. I would say there's probably 2 things. This is I have to keep this pretty high level because, again, I'm not necessarily an expert in international relations or anything, but I think we've already kind of brought up one idea, is that as much as it's possible, learn about different cultures. And so whatever business you're a part of, I hope you have some kind of metrics on where your audience lives. 67% are in the United States and 20% are in India and, 5%. So use that to your advantage. Okay, well, if I have 25% of my readers are in India, maybe I should learn a little bit about Indian culture. That doesn't cost anything. You can just, and it's interesting, and you become a more well-rounded person. There's really no downside to doing that. And at the same time, though, I also understand that it is not possible to write something that appeals to everyone. You just cannot do it. But the more common ground you can find across cultures, I think the better it will be. And so I think that's where the data comes into play. Well, I know most of my readers are here and here, so I'll focus on those. And then there's the other side of the coin in this case, and that's, as much as you study other cultures, try to get out of your own, right? Try to step out of your particular context when you're writing something or thinking about what to write. So think about what you're saying. Think about how you're saying it. Think about your assumptions. Am I making an assumption that someone in a different place might not hold? So if I'm writing sales copy, for example, and I make a reference or a metaphor or make a joke or something about, let's say, baseball, then all of my readers in India who prefer cricket are not going to know what I'm talking about. And if I've learned one thing as a baseball fan, I've learned this: you can either understand baseball or you can understand cricket, but you cannot understand both of them. That's been my experience. So that would be a great example of stepping outside your comfort zone. Oh, I just made a reference to American football. are my readers in China going to know what a touchdown is? Probably not. So maybe I should find some, right? So I think it's that combination of learning about other people, stepping into their shoes, and then questioning your own assumptions and your own worldview and saying, what assumptions am I making that someone else in a different place might not make?
Yeah, yeah. I have an example of that, Jones, that you bring up the word football. I am on a few WhatsApp groups where people from different countries participate. So like we play what Americans will call soccer. Yeah, but we call it football,
Mm-hmm.
but for us soccer. So whenever a local person, a Colombian, comes up and says, "Hey, let's play some football. Anybody wants to join?" And then the Americans will come up and say and ask, "Are you speaking about like American football or soccer?" Because like I don't know which one. So like like even the name of the sport, even like doesn't matter how international it is, it still brings up some confusion. So I'm certain you can do your best, but language is so flexible that not even your best effort can guarantee it will resonate with everybody, or it will reach across all audiences.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, but I think that's again, yeah.
Now, one of the tips you mentioned, connecting a little bit with making sure you resonate with audiences, is running your text through a native speaker, which maybe is available to you for
Mm-hmm.
support. But in the case that person is not available, maybe people will resort to using AI. Yeah, like they might ask AI, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
will this
Yeah.
work for an American audience? Will this work for an Australian audience?" And man, I think at this point AI is a good tool, but I don't think it's that good to make sure a text can pass that filter. Do you think AI, like incorporating AI into this type of like testing or proving or texts, is a good idea?
So here's my best advice for anything you want to do with AI. Treat it like an assistant and not like an employee. So like everything I say kind of falls under that umbrella. So I'm kind of with you where I think that it does some things really well for these limited scope. I think other things it doesn't do so well. And maybe that will change. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But I think if you need to use AI to help you refine and format your writing because you speak English as a second language, then that's a wonderful tool. And I'm glad that's available for you to do that. So I would never want to judge someone for doing that. But I think I think it's very useful to let's say you take your content and you ask a chat GPT, for example, does this sound like a Native American wrote it? And see what it says. I wouldn't just believe it like it's all because it doesn't always tell the truth. But if you don't have a person you can go to, if you don't have a copywriter, if you need something, then yeah, I mean, it's certainly better than nothing. But I think where people get into trouble with AI, and especially in writing, is they start using it to write for them. And from there, it's a very short bridge to using AI to start thinking for them. And then you're going to get into trouble because that's not really what it's supposed to be for. So my best advice is use it sparingly. Don't use it to think for you. But if you need to use it to help refine what you're writing, I think that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Now that you bring it up, John, could you give like a couple of examples of how to use AI and how not to use AI for improving your writing or for doing your writing even?
Yeah, so I'll give you a great example. My wife, who is a native English speaker, isn't great at writing. She's a graphic design artist. That's her skill set. And so she uses it quite a bit. She'll basically write out the draft of an email and then put it into, I think ChatGPT is what we use, and ask it to make it sound better. And it'll do it. And it'll definitely improve that writing. And so there's no reason that wouldn't work for someone who is, an ESL person. So I think that's totally fine. It's also a very useful tool for brainstorming. If you need to go from a blank page to something on a page, then it can be very helpful for that. Hey, AI, give me 20 ideas for a LinkedIn post about my business. This is what I do. And it'll give it to you. And 5 of those ideas will be pretty good. 10 of them will probably be terrible, and 5 are somewhere in between. So you take the 5 that are good and you can run with that. But I will tell you, the most the best use that I personally have found as a professional writer for me with AI is I use Google's Notebook LM, and I take all of my writing and I put it in there, and then I allow that AI to do some mining for me. Hey, tell me what summarize themes in my writing, or find some holes in my writing. What have I not talked about? So that's a great use of AI, but it's a little bit more again in the research and organization phase. So that's kind of where I use it most of all. But then for the actual writing, I do the writing, and then again, if you need AI to help you refine it, that's fine. But again, the main key for me is I'm not going to let it be the boss, and I'm not going to let it start thinking for me.
Yeah. Can you remind us the name of the Google tool you use, Jon?
Yeah, it's called Notebook LM, and they don't advertise it a whole lot, so you have to kind of search for it. But it's there, and it will take all of your notes and everything you've ever written, or any of your podcasts, or whatever you want, and you can kind of make your own mini little AI tool out of it.
Great. Okay. That's going to be in the show notes for sure. Thank you for that recommendation.
Yeah.
Great, Jon. I think I have covered all of my questions. You have given us, is lovely, because you have given us very precise answers, and I'm sure all these can translate into actionable items for our listeners. As the last question, I would like to ask you maybe for one tip. If you want to give a tip for a person who wants to improve their writing as an EFL person, or maybe someone who is insecure about the writing because they have to create this copy in English, and they have English as a foreign language, what would you tell that person?
Gosh, the best tip that I could give anyone for anything is to start before you're ready. You will never feel ready to start anything. And as a part of that, when you feel insecure about something, or maybe afraid of something, that's a pretty good indication that it's probably a growth step you should seriously consider taking. And so if you can start to look at fear in that way, as, oh, this fear represents an opportunity that I need to pursue, then I think that you'll grow a lot from doing that. So I would say, yeah, don't worry about don't even worry about being terrible at first. You just accept you're going to be, and it's okay. Like, that's totally fine. That's how you learn. So yeah, I would say feel the fear and do it anyway. That's the best advice that I can give.
Thank you very much, Jon. Yeah, I agree. Embrace the process and the mistakes and the looking bad. Jon, really appreciate your sharing all this knowledge with us. I'm sure people are going to want to learn more. If they want to continue improving their writing, maybe there is content or there is information that you share on social media, or on a different channel that people can follow you on. So where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I post about writing and things over there. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just use my name, Jon Clemence. And then I also have a website. It's called cedarpressproofreading.com, and I'll give you that link so you can post it if you want. And what you can do is you can go there, and then if you want to improve in your writing skills in English, click on the link that says buy my book. I have an ebook for sale. It'll teach you how to create quality, error-free writing. I even wrote a chapter for non-native English speakers that you can read and learn from. And plus, as an added bonus, when you click on the button, when you check out, you can actually pick up a copy of my writing guide called How to Write Content That Works. And it breaks down that framework I mentioned about, hooks and formatting and a call to action. And it gives you much more detail about how to do that. And you can get both those for $15. So it's not like a major expense. And it's really the perfect next step for this conversation.
Great. So for everybody listening, the links to Jon's LinkedIn website and books, if you would like to have access to those books, are going to be in the show notes. And Jon, looking forward to our next conversation. You are a second guest now, and yeah, I will be very, very happy to have you a third, fourth, and fifth time, because like every time you come is a lot of gold in terms of like information and knowledge to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I will come on anytime you want to have me.
Great. Goodbye.